Well, here I am again. Hopefully, I can be of help in some way, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I know about certain subject. And tonight, it's about the Bible, and that is it real? Now, I've done a good bit of reading and research along these lines myself, and certainly, am convinced on multiple levels that it is a well documented historical book. Obviously, it has a perspective uh, or perspectives, but it's something that's reflecting real history, and it's supported multiple ways. But I was watching a couple of videos the last few days. That's what I do. I watch videos or TV shows or read a book or whatever I might do. And then I share with you so that you can be edified by things and maybe do a little bit more yourself. And of course, as usual, I'm going to list a couple of good videos that I think are informative for you to listen to further to understand what I'm talking about. I'm just give you a cursory comments, synopsis at best. But the pseudepigrapha is the portion of books like they're popularly talked about in secular news. So, like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. Why is that not in the Bible? Well, the reason is that why did it not make the canon? How did it lose out? Well, it really didn't lose out. It didn't lose because it wasn't there in the first place. It didn't compare to other valid sources, right? So, and it had some weird stuff that just couldn't be confirmed by any other source. Facts, or their facts, their alternate facts that no other source could confirm. Now, if you find alternate facts and you can go confirm your alternate facts, then you might have something that's really going on, as long as both those are good sources or multiple sources. In this case, that wasn't found. And the thing you need to understand is that the approved writings, certainly the Old Testament canon was there by about 400 years before Christ. But the approved writings of the New Testament were approved because these were writings that were either from Paul, the churches had gotten them, they had used them, they had copied them over and over and over, maybe from Peter, etc., from various leadership like that. Or they were writings from people who had actually been with Paul or with Jesus or with the disciples, so they were witnesses. And like, for example, Luke, he seemed to have interviewed various people who had been there, right? And possibly the same kind of thing with Mark. Now, you can still argue whether you want to about whether the actual Matthew or Mark or John actually wrote those their gospels, their writings, but they are presented as if they are, and people understood that they were by those people. Now, if they, once again, I think was Matthew a tax collector, so he wasn't a stupid man, he wasn't an uneducated person probably, but so these were witnesses. They wrote down the testimonies. Whereas when you come to the Gospel of Thomas, this is like several hundred years after Christ. And now, look at the video below by Will Huff, I think is his name. And he'll go into some detail about what's evident about that. But so you compare these other writings that come along over time. You compare them with the accepted writings that the people in the church had accepted because, once again, they knew the people who were writing them, etc. And they just couldn't be accepted. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And then the Gospel of Thomas, experts pretty much agree that it's basically a propaganda piece by for Gnosticism. And the whole idea is let's attribute this to to Thomas, and that'll be a lot better than just saying, hey, we've got an idea. It gives it some weight, it gives it some influence, and maybe Christians would take on more Gnostic viewpoints. But it expresses ideas that the Gnostic ideas, which basically is a works-oriented kind of faith belief system, that you have to do something in order to get to the next level, heaven. Now there's all kind of Gnosticism, but if it's Christian Gnosticism, it would be the idea of for us to get to heaven, or the next heaven, or whatever it is, for us to ascend. A lot of times you get that in Christian Gnosticism, to ascend to a new level. Then you've got to do something to get there. Whereas the Christian gospel says that Christ died, and that's it. Christ died for you, and he covered your sins, and he's paid your way to heaven. You have nothing to do. All you have to do is accept it. That's the grace of God. That's the Christian message. So, so things like the Gospel of Thomas are what we might call today fake news. So if I told you that there was drones flying around New York from the planet Zarkon, well, you might think I was a little kooky. Except if I said, now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says that there are drones from the planet Zarkon, then that would give weight to what I'm saying, right? You'd believe me more readily. That's just better than saying sources said, right? We get a lot of sources said in the news today, right? So that's the way things work with a lot of books not being accepted. Now, what about what's in the Bible as it is right now? And there's another video down below that you can take a look at. It's by a guy named Warner Wallace, J. Warner Wallace. He wrote a book called A Cold Case Christianity. And Wallace was a police detective. He wasn't a Christian. He wasn't raised a Christian. His parents didn't go to church or anything. He didn't go to church until he was about 35 years old, and it's like his wife drug him to church one Sunday, and he listened in the sermon, and he heard what the preacher said, and he thought, I want to see if this preacher is telling me the truth. So he got a Bible, and he read the Gospels. You should get a Bible and read the Gospel, because a lot of what you hear people tell you in all kind of BS sessions that you sit in, and some of those can be actual Sunday school classes or Bible studies where people don't know what they're talking about. But certainly, in college and things like that, or just maybe you're talking about it at the local McDonald's having a cup of coffee with some friends. I don't know. But a lot of people don't know what the heck they're talking about. So anyway, read it yourself. That's what he decided to do. But as a detective, he had detective techniques, a detective's viewpoint as he read things. And this was interesting. So he shares that in his book, Cold Case Christianity. And the message of the book is that the New Testament is true. That's what the message is. But he breaks it down into how he comes to that conclusion. And the Bible is attacked because Jesus' morals offend people. So, hey, we don't like what Jesus said about this, that, or the other. So we're going to pretend that, Jesus said, love your neighbor, don't judge anybody, and stick your head in the ground and let everybody do everything and approve of it all. And he didn't do that, unfortunately. Actually, fortunately, we want to get to heaven, so we want to know how to get there. And Jesus gave us a righteous message. So here's a few things that he talked about. He talked about how, and you can watch it himself, but he'll talk about how non-believers claim that there are contradictions in the Bible. And he goes into detail about how a contradiction, there are not contradictions, there are variations of things, people seeing things from different viewpoints, etc. And I'll let you watch his video. No point in me getting into the detail of that. Listen to him, but you'll hear him talk about that. He pointed out that there's more evidence for Jesus than there is for Buddha or Muhammad. And people don't tend to argue that Buddha or Muhammad weren't historic figures, but they want to do it with Jesus all the time. So he points that out, which is very true. And there are many different sources to give that proof of biblical information, Jesus, etc. Josephus and Pliny and the church fathers, which people assume the church fathers existed. They did various writings. So there's different people who give proof of this. And then he gets into, as a detective, he talks about that there is evidence for Christ. So people who claim that there is no evidence for Christ, they're just incorrect. And why is that? And again, I'll let you get into the detail. He talks about it extensively, but I'm just going to hit them right quickly here for you to know why, in case you don't get around to listen to it. First of all, he says there are two types of evidence. One is direct evidence, and that's when you have an eyewitness account or a videotape. I watch detective shows all the time, and they're always going to CCTV to see if they can find the person walking down the street or looking into the window or breaking into a building or whatever, or committing the crime. That's on a videotape, and that is direct evidence. Okay, if somebody comes in and attacks you, and there's another person in the room and they see it, well, that's direct evidence. And then there's indirect evidence, which we see all the time. It's evidence that requires inference and reasoning. And it's things like fingerprints, DNA, internet, computer evidence, cell phones, text messages, emails, etc., like that. It's character witnesses, people who can say, well, that guy, he got into fights all the time, and he threatened to kill people, and so he's likely to have murdered somebody, right? And the other way would go, well, I know John, he couldn't have killed a flea, so that would be indirect evidence. And maybe there's overheard conversations, things like that. Those are indirect evidences. That's what the Bible is chock full of, is indirect evidence. And he says that every little piece of evidence counts. So you add them all up together, and if you only got one piece of what you would call, we would probably call, what kind of evidence is that? Anyway, indirect evidence. If you just have one or two things, the more you have, the more complete the picture is. And that's what the Bible is. That's what the New Testament is. It gives you this complete picture. Whenever people are convicted of murder, often, there's nobody there to see the murder. The murderer doesn't want people to know he did it or she did it. So how do you prove it? Well, you'd use it with circumstantial. That was the word I was looking for just a minute ago. You'd use circumstantial evidence, right? And the DA puts together a case based on circumstantial evidence, and the jury finds that, well, we've got so much evidence. This is evidence to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt, right? It's not 100% proof. Nobody was in the room when the murder happened, but we have enough circumstantial, indirect evidence that the guy is convicted of murder. So these are the kind of things that are talked about. I invite you, as I normally do, to watch these videos. I watch a lot of stuff. So that's the way I take in stuff. So I watch a lot of things. I don't share everything I see with you, but I share things that I think will be beneficial to you. So please like and subscribe and make comments. And maybe you watch the video and you want to come back and comment my video. Maybe that's what you do, but feel free to comment to anything I say as well. So take a shot at it and see what you learn. Have a good day.